Well, hi, everybody. Paul M. Neuberger, CEO of the Young Guns Movement, coming at you here. Hope everybody is having an efficient, effective, and most importantly, a productive day today. One of the things that I love most about being CEO of this movement, a movement that is sweeping the globe, might I add. Boy, what a blessing this past year has been. We've been touching a lot of lives. We've been igniting the influence of other people, and it's so wonderful to have young gunners such as yourself tune into content like this. One of my favorite things about serving you and serving as CEO of this movement is bringing you original game-changing content. But really, that doesn't really differentiate the movement per se, because a lot of organizations bring good content. A lot of entities bring just some thought leaders and individuals that are challenging the status quo. But I think one of the things that really differentiates us, and you've heard me say this before countless times, we are breaking the rules of business, because more often than not, the way the business is conducted is broken. So how do we do this? Well, we just want to give you access to some of the most innovative disruptors on the planet, people that are punching conventional wisdom squarely in the mouth. They're unapologetically doing so, and they're not waiting for permission to change the world. And I'm very excited to say that we've got one such individual with us today. It's wonderful to talk to her because she's a friend of mine, and this is going to come out a little bit in our conversation here today. But let me introduce you to the one, the only, Amelia Forczak, the founder of Pithy Wordsmithery. Amelia, wonderful to have you on the program here today, my friend.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I just have to ask, because I'm an animal lover, is your dog okay back there?
Yeah, this is Matilda, and she's basically just always sleeping in my office. This is like her happy space. I mean, honestly, we have 3 kids here. We do a nanny share, so she's just like trying to get out of the chaos.
A very smart dog for sure. She looked dead to the world, so I just wanted to make sure that she still had a
She's
pulse.
good.
It sounds like she does. Awesome. Well, I know
Yeah.
Matilda's going to get excited. Matilda's going to get excited based on the energy level here in the next few minutes, as are our viewers, because it's always a pleasure to talk to you here, my friend. So one of the things that we really like to do here at the Young Guns Movement is we love to hear personal stories. And I know you've got a good one for sure. So Pithy Wordsmithery, you are a very talented person. You've done a lot of remarkable things in your short professional career. Why did you want to start this organization, Amelia? I'm dying for you to tell the audience.
Yeah, good question. So I always wanted to write books. Even when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a writer. And I was working in marketing after college, and I got the opportunity to write a book for my CEO. And he knew it would be a great move for the company for marketing. He just didn't have time to do it. So I volunteered to help. I wrote the book, and I realized that I loved it and I wanted to write more books. So I ended up forming the company on the side of my full-time job. My CEO went off to become a professional speaker, sold the company, so we parted ways. And then since then, I just was doing what I was doing for that company, but for all different kinds of companies for my own business. So that was 9 years ago, and it's been an incredible journey.
What is it about your line of work that excites you so much? Because you and I, we've had this conversation before. I'm drawn to passionate people. Their energy really affects me, and it brings out the most in me. And whenever you and I talk, I mean, you've got this passion about you. What is it about your line of work that gets you so jacked up?
Yeah. One of the things that I love most is working with all different kinds of people. So by helping people write books, I'm always working with different people. And so I get to learn a lot about what they do and get to know them as people. And you really kind of like get to dig in and get like a crash course on the subject matter. And it keeps it fresh and interesting. So it's never boring where I'm working on the same thing for years. It's like I'm working on a project for maybe 6 months or 8 months, and then it switches to another one. So I feel like that's a really a great cadence to keep it fresh and new.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and just based on some of the things that make me me, I'm a fan of making the impossible possible. And one of my most go-to keynotes is instantaneous differentiation, how to make yourself memorable. I love differentiation. I love those little nuances that set a person or an organization apart from their competitors. And I have to imagine that the ghostwriting space can be somewhat of a crowded, competitive space. You're very, very good at what you do. Can you describe for us, please, what is the pithy wordsmithery differentiation? Somebody elects to work with you. What are they going to get with you that they just can't find with some of these other companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I have a background in marketing, and I worked in marketing for years before I started writing books. And I think that's a little bit different than a lot of other ghostwriters. So I get really passionate about the strategy portion of it. That's the part that really excites me. Like, I want the book to serve as a tool for the author's business. So instead of just having the author tell me what to write down, I want to be an active partner in figuring out what we should write about, why we're writing about it, how it's going to fit into the author's goals, like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What's the author's niche, their branding, what's their competition. So I love like digging into all of that stuff and helping them figure out what kind of book they should write and why, so that when the book comes out, it really serves the purpose that they want it to serve. And it's really helping them move their business forward. And I haven't really heard of any other ghostwriting companies or ghostwriters that really get that involved in the business strategy side of things. And I think it's really helpful for authors because, like, as an entrepreneur, especially, like, you can get so close to your own business and your own content that you have trouble seeing it from an outsider's perspective. So getting that outside perspective to help advise you on like the nuances of positioning content, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. And you're right. That's kind of the one-stop shop with respect to ghostwriting. And that's a very high quality service that you're able to provide. Speaking of high quality, you've had a nice run of it, not only during your career as the founder of Pithy Wordsmithery, but especially over the course of the last 12 months. And one of the things that I've noticed about Pithy Wordsmithery is you guys are having one of your best years on record. You are growing like weeds, I suppose, just really doing a great job closing new business, securing new clients. But I'm sorry, to me, that just strikes me as a huge oxymoron where you're having success in a year where the world is falling apart. You're having success at a time when lots of businesses regrettably just aren't surviving. Throughout the disruption, throughout the economic calamity, throughout all the stuff that's been ensuing in 2020, you guys are actually thriving right now. And I would love to know, how have you been able to do this? And what can the young gunners watching this learn from what Pithy Wordsmithery has been up to?
Yeah. So it has obviously been a really hard year. And it's funny because it looks like it's been such smooth sailing for us the whole time, but we actually did slow down a lot, especially in the beginning of the pandemic. We work with a lot of small business owners and everything stopped for them. So things started, coming down the line and business was slowing way down for us. But just because the paid work was slowing down doesn't mean that we were slowing down. And so we had a huge list of things that we'd been wanting to work on for months or for years, as a lot of entrepreneurs do, but you don't quite ever get the time to work on those projects. So we finally had the time and we just like dug into it. So one of the things I've really been wanting to do for a while is create an online course that teaches people how to write books. And I ended up creating 2 online courses with the time that I had. And it's funny because I was like taking it so seriously at the time. I set a deadline for myself and I was getting up at like 6 a.m. to shoot videos. And then I was working through the day and working in the evening and on the weekends. So I was working like 12-hour days, and like most of it wasn't paid work. So it was funny because it's like, I am doing this to myself, but it was for the greater good. Like, I knew I wanted to get all of these things done. And I just took advantage of having the time. So we did the online courses. We also did a rebrand for the business. We updated the color palette. We updated the logo, got new designs on the website. I started an Instagram account. I was shooting more videos for YouTube, started posting more to LinkedIn. So we did a ton of stuff that we wouldn't normally have had time to do. So we sort of looked at the extra time as a blessing, even though it would have been great to have paid work, and also would have been great to just rest a little bit, but I just wanted to get all of that stuff done. And so by focusing so much on that over the pandemic and continuing to put out content, we really stayed top of mind with our clients and our prospects. And we got a lot of feedback from people saying like, oh yeah, I love your stuff on LinkedIn. You've been, really putting stuff out there. Maybe you could help me with LinkedIn, or maybe you could give me advice on how to help with my brand, just because they saw us putting so much stuff out there. So we really, I think, like, use that time the best we possibly could, even though we were bummed that we didn't have more paid work. But when things started picking back up again, we got so busy, and now we're like booked through the end of the year and through the beginning of next year. So it's definitely been an interesting year, and we've accomplished a lot, but it's been crazy for sure.
Yeah, certainly sounds like that. And so if somebody watching this right now says, well, that's good for Amelia. That's good for pithy wordsmithery. I'm in a different field, offering a different product and service. Maybe I don't have the same personal makeup that she does, or my business, again, just has a bit of a different functionality. If you were to take your story, if you were to take what you learned during this pandemic and offer advice to any entrepreneur, small business owner that might be watching this, that might actually be struggling now, and there's a lot of them during this time of uncertainty, what 2 or 3 best practices, what 2 or 3 pieces of advice, Amelia, would you offer to somebody who really hasn't turned that corner yet in an effort to get them to where they want to be?
Yeah. It's tricky. I think one of the things that's helped us is always trying new things. So trying to be as agile as possible. And if something's not working that well, trying something else. So this year we tried a lot of new things, like even with social media, like for LinkedIn, the algorithm's always changing. So staying up to date with what's going on with that. So maybe articles aren't performing as well anymore. Maybe you shoot more videos. And then also just like learning how to shoot videos, like keeping up with the technical skills. Cause I feel like if you don't do that, it's so easy to fall behind. Instagram, that was another thing. It was like, oh, Instagram Reels are the thing now. How do we do that? Everyone's learning how to do it. So like trying to figure that out and publishing some, seeing how they turn out. So just kind of like playing around with new things. And then also just like being patient, because not everything is going to work out. Not everything is going to be perfect. And it's kind of hard in the beginning to see what's really going to be effective for getting traction and what you should do more of. So just like knowing that it might take a little bit of time to see your efforts pay off. But if you keep trying different things, it's definitely going to help the business.
Well, maybe this question is a little too granular, and maybe you don't necessarily have a definitive answer to it, but I'm going to ask anyway, because patience is not a virtue that Paul M. Neuberger possesses.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing at times, because I have 4 businesses. The businesses are doing fairly well, not perfect, but again, I'm a hard charging guy, and I want to some degree make my own luck, but it's also a curse because I never go to bed satisfied. I always am a little edgy. I've always got this nervous energy. Waiting for people to get back to me, waiting for something to materialize is not a strength that I possess. So when you talk about just learning to be patient, again, maybe this is a little too in the minutia, in the weeds, Amelia, because I'd love to learn how do you get patient? How do you master this art of being patient, and how were you able to do it specifically? Because there's a lot of people like me that would love to learn.
It's funny because I think patience is an area that I could also definitely improve on. That's not really my top skill set either. But I guess we just stay so busy sometimes. It's hard to really worry about things too much, because you just got to move on to the next thing. So trying a bunch of new things, I guess, keeps you interested, and then stop fixating on the little things, or I don't know, if something doesn't go that well, if you send an e-blast, people are going to unsubscribe. I don't even look at that stat. I know you do. I protect yourself from the stats or the data that are going to get you down, and just keep focusing on positivity and moving forward.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and it's good for a knucklehead like me to remember as well, too. I mean, I've got 18,000 or so people on my email distribution list. I could get a lot of good feedback, a lot of good commentary. But if I got those 2 unsubscribes, I'm fixated on them for an hour. I have to take
Yeah.
that advice and I've got to learn. But that is a definite tough thing to do from time to time. One of the questions that I have, because I know you're a big fan of professional development. You've mentioned that in your answer. You're always looking to grow. You're always trying to better yourself, which is part of the reason that you're so successful today. But you're nowhere near where you're going to be in 2 to 3 years, which is very exciting for me to watch this evolution. So you're a big fan of professional development, but you're also somebody that has a good awareness of self. You know where you're strong, you know where you're weak, and you know where you need to improve. So I'm curious, over this pandemic, over this period of disruption, what has Amelia Forczak learned about herself?
Ah, that's a good one. Okay, so I I hired a business manager within the past year because I was like acutely aware of the things that I'm like not good at, like, and I really just need to not do them. So anything with admin or bookkeeping or like details for project management, that kind of thing, my business manager handles that, and she's so good at it. And that's like the stuff that she likes, and it's how her mind thinks. Like she's a detailed person, detail oriented. I'm more like strategy, big picture, and then move on. And so having her in my business has been one of the best things I've ever done for the business because it's freed my time up to work on things that I'm good at and that I'm passionate about. And ever since that happened, like I think the business has run so much smoother. And another thing that we're working on really is like systematizing things. I think that was like a big area for improvement for a long time. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting out just kind of as like a one person shop, as you grow the business, the way that you do things changes. And what used to work isn't going to work when there are like now 10 people involved or 15 people involved. So we had like a lot of processes that were really clunky, like how we'd invoice clients and how we'd pay our freelancers and how we'd track things. And we've really improved on that recently with the help of my business manager. And so those have all been big, big improvements for this year. So I'd say like best advice is to like figure out what you're good at and then delegate the stuff that you are not good at. It's such a simple thing, but it can be hard.
You're right, but I would say that's kind of part of the ingredients of success is just a lot of the simple things, the proper blocking and tackling, showing up, giving it your all, delegation, time management. I mean, those are all very simple things that we as entrepreneurs and business owners have been taught for a long time. But I think if you can master those simple things, all of a sudden now your business really starts to take off. And it's always refreshing to get that reinforced. I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not a cure for cancer that nobody else knows. It's just a reinforcement of these very simple best practices. And undoubtedly, you and your team are very, very good at that. Well, for those folks watching this, you may or may not know that Amelia was the ghost writer for my book, The Secrets to Cold Call Success. And it took a lot to make me look good. And Amelia will probably be the first to tell you that. But the Secrets to Cold Call Success ended up being an Amazon #1 bestseller in several categories. I owe a lot of that to Amelia. And again, whether you know this or not, too, she is currently working with David Bellman, also of Young Guns, on a forthcoming book project. So she's basically the official ghostwriter of Young Guns. And again, we're very blessed to be associated with her. So Amelia, a lot of the people that are watching this right now are very talented individuals such as yourself. They're entrepreneurs, they're business owners. Again, the Young Guns movement really deals with innovative disruptors, people that have fresh ideas, new takes. They're challenging the status quo. And many of these individuals probably think, I should write a book someday. You know what? I've got a story in me that the world needs to hear. I have to imagine this is dependent on the person. It's dependent on the organization to some degree. But in a nutshell, what advice could you give to our young gunners watching this here today where they know they've got a good story? Maybe how do they know when they've got something worthy of a book, basically?
Yeah. So writing a book is sort of becoming like the new standard for thought leaders in any industry, and it helps your career so much to say that you have a book. So having it on your website, having it be part of your personal brand, just making people aware that you have a book really can take your career to the next level. So I highly recommend it. And another good thing to know is that it's doable. It doesn't have to be like a massive tome. It can be like a shorter book, something that, you might even have a good chunk of the content written already if you've done blog posts or if you've, done videos or keynotes. So like you can take a lot of your existing content that goes with your brand or your business and then sort of repurpose that into a longer format in your book. So you're not starting from scratch. It's more manageable than people think. And I would say like probably the biggest thing to think about is the outline. So many people just like get started writing a chapter of the book when they don't totally know where the book is going or the strategy or positioning of the book. And I think a lot of times that turns into like rewriting content. But if you start with a solid outline, which is something that we help people with, it makes a huge difference when it comes to writing the book later.
One of probably my favorite things about working with you, Amelia, outside of the friendship that we developed and the playful banter that we engage in from time to time, one of the things that I look is probably one of the most ultimate compliments. It's not even so much the Amazon #1 bestseller status. It's not even so much that people look at my book as, man, I really want to have that. This is full of a lot of wonderful content. It's people are truly amazed that the book was ghostwritten. And the reason they're so amazed is because they say, Paul, I heard your personality come out in this. I mean, it sounds like you talk. This is you. You mean somebody else wrote that for you? I have to imagine, and maybe you just make it look super easy, but I have to imagine writing somebody else's book, yet making it sound like they're talking in their voice is not an easy job. How do you manage to navigate that? And how do you do that so well?
I don't know. I think like it doesn't seem that hard to me, I guess. I don't know. So when we do ghostwriting, or sometimes it's called like a writing partnership because a lot of people are so transparent about getting help these days. Whenever I interview somebody, I take notes and I just write down what they say in their voice. Like I don't change it to like my own language when I'm writing it down. And so like all my notes sound like them and I get a good feel for their voice. I get to know them. And it's just sort of easy for me to write it down like that. And sometimes I think people try to get like too flowery or formal or complicated in writing, but writing is the best if it just sounds like you. And usually that's really simple and straightforward. So I don't know if that's just like a knack that I have for it, or it's just like trying to make it simple and easy. But that's a great compliment. I'm glad you told me that. That's like probably like the best compliment that I could get as a ghostwriter, to be like, oh, it sounds exactly like you. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the favorite compliments when I get that from people, because it validates the decision that I made and it validates the partnership that we entered into in this regard. But one of the things that we talk about with respect to books and everything else, I mean, what is the objective of any book outside of teaching, outside of education? Sure. But it's also to tell a good story, a personal story, a professional story, maybe a series of stories. You strike me as just a wonderful storyteller who's good at engaging an audience and bringing people in to somebody's story. What would you say are the hallmarks of a good story? Because it's not just relegated to books. People can do it at networking events. People can do it in their communication with their prospects and in a variety of different situations. But what are the elements of a good story, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is vulnerability. And I always try to pull that out of people. And sometimes it's like a little bit hard for people to want to be that honest. And so I manage a Forbes column, and we have different guests every month. And that's one thing where I'm always, trying to coach them on being as honest and vulnerable and showing those like imperfections and the humbling moments. And people always ask like, oh, what topics are trending? Like, what do people want to read about? And it's not really about the topic. It's about how you tell the story. So if you tell it with honesty and you talk about learning points or mistakes or like the juicy details, like how you would tell a friend something, that's what draws people in. It's not like the buttoned up post where it's like 5 ways to do this. Like, people are sort of over that by now. So it's like you really need to put yourself out there and be yourself instead of being worried about what people are going to think of you if you don't come across as perfect.
And I guess, why do you think vulnerability works so well? I've just been fascinated to see the routes that people take on social media. One of the
Yeah.
alums from Young Guns, Michaela Alexis, she's all about vulnerability, and she's got a massive
Yeah.
audience. You've got individuals like Grant Cardone. Again, nothing wrong with Grant Cardone, but all his pictures are him in front of his private planes and his Rolls Royces, acting like the guy's probably never shed a tear in his life. Why is it that you think vulnerability works so well from your experience?
I think it cuts through the noise. There's so much out there on social media where people are trying to look perfect. Like if you scroll through your feed, it's everybody's like happiest moments. Like it seems like people are always like, well, I guess before COVID, like traveling. It seems like everyone's always on vacation or having a blast with their friends or just partying all the time because nobody's showing like the moments that aren't quite that great. And so if you are able to highlight those on social, it really everybody can relate to it because nobody's life is perfect. Nobody makes perfect decisions all the time. So if you are able to show it, I think it just makes you more likable and more relatable.
What would you say is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur? Because there's wonderfully positive days and there's some miserable days. You've been there,
Yeah.
I've been there. What is your favorite thing about the entrepreneurship life, and why?
I like the freedom to do what I want. I want to be able to come up with my own ideas and be like, let's do that, and I think that's sort of like what made me interested in starting my own business in the first place. Like I get excited about certain things and I want to turn that into a project or I want to see how it goes. And so I think just having like the freedom and flexibility to do all of those things was always really exciting for me. And it's I can't even actually imagine leaving that, like having to go back to a corporate job or something like that. I'm sure it'd be fine. But like when I worked in corporate before, I always like the end of the day, I felt like a caged animal, like leaving. I was like, I have to get out. Like I felt like trapped in there or something. It was weird. Like it was not for me. And I, need the flexibility to be able to move about the world freely, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thinking of Amelia Forczak as a caged animal, I have a hard time balancing those two. So, yeah, I think you've definitely made the right decision in this regard. I guess one of my last questions for you is again, you've given us a wonderful roadmap here in terms of how to survive a massive disruption, how to push yourself, challenge yourself, go outside of your comfort zone. A lot of good food for thought here as we move forward. I know you work with a number of different individuals, organizations. They come in all shapes and sizes. Who would you say? So if somebody's watching this and saying, boy, there's something to this Amelia Forczak, I think pithy wordsmithery and I should enter into some kind of a professional relationship. Can you just kind of describe what types of individuals probably would be the best fit for you? Who are they? What are their needs? What are they going through right now? Just so if somebody watching this says, hey, that describes me, they at least know that, hey, they would probably do quite well in a partnership with pithy wordsmithery.
Yeah. So if you're interested in writing a book, but you don't really know where to start, like those are our clients. Like we should talk. So we have a couple courses that can help, save you a ton of time if you're interested in like learning more about the publishing process, the writing process. Are you ready to write a book? How would you market it? Like all those basic questions. It can save you tons and tons of time in research by having all the information in one spot. So that I think is a really good solution. And we've got that on our website. If you go to pithywordsmithery.com, you go to courses. There's one called So You Want to Write a Book. And then we work with entrepreneurs and leaders. A lot of our clients are professional speakers, C-suite people. They're people who have established some kind of audience. So they've got a following and they have people who want more content from them. They're just having a hard time figuring out like what that would look like if they put a book together. Like what would the direction be? That kind of thing. So if you have people who are following you and they're interested in what you have to say, you're a good candidate for writing a book. And we also help coach people on how to build up their platform even more so that when the book comes out, it is a big success. But if you've got that audience, that's really like the only prerequisite for having the book. Does that make sense?
When Amelia Forczak says it, it makes perfect sense. Absolutely. Well, I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy day here, Amelia, to share your expertise with us. As we've discussed, it's especially during this period of uncertainty and massive disruption. It's kind of a scary place out there. This is uncharted territory for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs, but from somebody who's succeeding, somebody who's thriving, somebody who's unapologetically doing it her own way, I really do appreciate the insight. You gave us a lot to think about. And again, as one of the official ghostwriters of the Young Guns movement, if anybody out there is interested in exploring, hey, do I have a story to tell? Hey, do I have a book? Hey, how do I ignite my influence and grow my presence? Amelia was the best business decision I ever made. And I got to tell you, my friend, it was a blessing to talk with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And by the way, your dog still hasn't moved. Are you sure she has a pulse? I just want to know.
You still awake? She's like, let me
All right. Well, thank you, Amelia. We appreciate it. And thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned to the Young Guns movement for more high-value content just like this. We'll see you next time.